Michel Ney, the Marshal of France in Napoleon's army, was captured after Napoleon's defeat and tried for treason. His defense lawyer argued that Michel was technically not a French citizen and therefore could not be tried in a French court. At that moment, Michel shouted, "I am French, and I will remain French," destroying his own defense out of pride for his heritage. He was to be executed by firing squad. Michel refused to wear a blindfold, and in one of the greatest executions of all time, was given permission to give the order to fire. Staring down his own men, Michel declared, "Soldiers, when I give the command to fire, fire straight at my heart. Wait for the order. It will be my last to you. I protest against my condemnation. I have fought 100 battles for France, and not one against her. Soldiers, fire." Michel Ney was unwavering in his self-respect and loyalty for his country, even when his country turned against him. He's also an example of why firing squads are the raddest thing ever!
No blindfold. That's for losers. I like to see where the bullet hits. I learned that during the war. I was decorated, you know. Yeah. Wonder what the Emperor's doing today?
Ready?
You guys want to move a little closer? You don't want to miss, you know. Looks bad on the report.
Aim!
Boy, the Emperor's really cutting it close. What a flair for the dramatic. That old sly boots.
Fire!
Today we imagine firing squads to be a row of soldiers with rifles firing on someone simultaneously, so that no one knows who fired the lethal shot. However, firing squads actually predate firearms. The Christian Saint Sebastian is commonly depicted as having been tied to a tree and shot by Roman archers, and Edmund the Martyr, King of Anglia, is also said to have been executed this way by Viking commander Ivar the Boneless. Being tied to a tree and shot by arrows several times might not sound very enjoyable, but to be killed by someone whose name is Ivar the Boneless would probably make it up for me. Firing squads are traditionally used to kill traitors, deserters, and treasoners. The traitor is usually killed by a member of their own unit, just opposing the group against the individual. They're usually forced to kneel, bound and blindfolded, but some are allowed to stand without a blindfold, and in rare cases like Michel Ney's, can give the soldiers the order to fire. Which is so metal. I mean, think about it. The idea of giving your own executioner the order to kill you is probably the most metal thing ever. There were hundreds of firing squad executions for deserters in the Civil War, but after that, popularity for the method waned. There is only one known example of execution for desertion after the Civil War by firing squad. This was during World War II. Eddie Slovik, an ex-convict, was separated from his division during an artillery attack. Faced with certain death, Eddie found that he wasn't cut out for combat.
I'm too nervous and too scared to serve in a rifle company, sir.
He deserted, and after running for several miles, reached the rear. He was given the chance to return to the front lines instead of receiving punishment.
You might even get a death sentence. Desertion in time of war is a capital offense.
Eddie saw that other deserters had only faced prison, and since Eddie was very used to prison, he thought of it as an easy out, so he decided to take the court-martial. However, instead of being given a dishonorable discharge and being taken to prison, he was sentenced to be executed in order to discourage further desertions.
Able-bodied men have been avoiding hazardous duty for years. We haven't shot any of them. Maybe it's time we started.
As he was standing in front of his executors, Eddie proclaimed, "They're not shooting me for deserting the United States Army. Thousands of guys have done that. They just need to make an example out of somebody, and I'm it, because I'm an ex-con. I used to steal things when I was a kid, and that's what they're shooting me for. They're shooting me for the bread and chewing gum I stole when I was 12 years old." After Eddie Slovik's execution, firing squads were rarely used in the US, and most of them were in Utah. There was James Rogers in 1960, Gary Gilmore in 1977, and John Taylor in 1996. Within the space of 40 years, only 3 people have been executed by firing squad in the United States, and all of them in Utah. Then, 14 years after John Taylor's execution, Ronnie Lee Gardner's execution date arrived. Ronnie Lee Gardner was the last person to be executed by firing squad in the United States, but he didn't go down easy. Gardner killed Melvin Otterstrom in 1984 during a robbery. In April 1985, while being moved to a court hearing for the murder, he shot his attorney in an attempt to escape. The attempt failed and he was sentenced to life in prison along with the death penalty. 9 years later, in 1994, he stabbed an inmate in Utah State Prison, but because he didn't kill the inmate, it wasn't added to his charges. After his defense continued to appeal several times, his case was taken all the way to the United States Supreme Court, who refused to intervene. Finally, Gardner was executed in June of 2010, after his case had drawn out for 25 years. However, Gardner was Mormon, and one of the beliefs of Mormonism is blood atonement, where some crimes are so heinous that the blood of Jesus isn't enough to atone for them, and the criminal's own blood must be shed on the ground. Because of this belief, Gardner requested execution by firing squad, the first to happen in 14 years, to ensure that his blood would touch the ground. Gardner's execution became the subject of hot debate in the United States, with many people against capital punishment speaking out. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, even released a statement denouncing blood atonement. However, even though we haven't had a firing squad execution in 8 years, as the capital punishment debate continues, and now that Oklahoma is the only state currently using this method, the firing squads might make a comeback. Drug companies are reluctant to provide their products to make lethal injections, whether it's due to moral issues or public image. As a result, Utah enacted a legislation in 2015 allowing for the use of firing squads if lethal injections are unavailable. There are a lot of other states also exploring a return to the firing squad. Whether this method returns or not, though, it can be safely said that some of the most interesting characters, moving speeches, and most intriguing circumstances have led to executions by firing squads.